There's a strange calm in the air. When I go out and talk to people and it gets political, it doesn't seem like anyone's too worried about what's going to happen in 2024, despite the fact that we all agree Joe Biden can't win and Donald Trump may end up in prison. And so I'm hanging out talking to these guys and they're like, well, I don't know who I'll vote for. Nobody really wants to say for sure. Some guys are like, I always just vote Republican. And I'm like, well, Joe Biden can't win, right? The Democrats are fractured, especially as it pertains to Israel-Palestine. And I'm just going to come out and say it right away, right in the beginning of this segment. Yo, I'm sorry, to the woke left, they're Nazis. That's it. And I don't mean quite literally in every facet, but the overwhelming similarities between the woke left and Nazism is just too much. It's just too much. And so, of course, there is the academic. What is a Nazi? And I don't necessarily mean like that. I'm not saying if you take like a book that explains everything they do. I'm saying their ideology has way too many overlapping tenets. Their behavior, their symbolism, all of that stuff. It's effectively what it is. Okay, it is whatever the phenomenon was that led to the rise of the Nazis is identical to what the woke left is. And as for their core tenets, they actually do share a decent amount. What I mean by what led to it is the fervent zealotry and banality of evil that leads people to just march in large groups chanting horrible things. So now we have this from the post-millennial. Abandon Biden campaign kicks off as swing state Muslim leaders coalesce in Dearborn, Michigan. Michigan is a very important swing state, but Donald Trump is also leading in a few other swing states, Georgia and Arizona. In Arizona, Joe Biden is bleeding support. You know what that means? It means Trump might not win those voters, but with Biden losing them, I don't see how Donald Trump loses in the long run. Now, here's what the core of all this really comes down to. For the past 7 or so years, I have been saying that the left is experiencing some kind of budding process, right? Where a lump of the left has grown this big lump, which is now flopped off and has created something totally different. This is how I view the left and the right in this country. The right is typically the right, and liberals used to be the left. But now that the left has created this new, I don't know what you would call it, it has asexually reproduced by the process of budding. Now there is this weird woke cult. And then there's the left and the right. The traditional left and the right in this country have typically always gotten along on most issues and then debated things like abortion or the tax rate. But as many people say, 10, 20 years ago, you could be a Democrat or Republican, hang out with somebody and be like, well, I'm voting for this person. It's like, oh, okay, well, it is in fact only, in my opinion, the woke elements of the left as this viral force infecting our institutions and, causing problems for the Democrats. Because for these people, the Democratic Party is their only path forward because the Democratic Party is left-leaning. It's where many of them originate. But when you march down the street chanting, targeting Jewish-owned businesses, okay, the Democrats are going to lose massive amounts of support, not just from people who are terrified that Joe Biden and Democrats have been courting these people, but these woke leftists themselves ain't voting Democrat because they're anti-Israel. Of course, the neoliberal and the neoconservative establishment forces, they're all pro-Israel. For this, I do not see a realistic path for Joe Biden to win, and I think everybody agrees. But what are they going to do? Swap in Gavin Newsom? Even Newsom said in the debate stage with Ron DeSantis, for some reason they were debating, by the way, that he's not going to be the party's nominee. So who is it? Some people have said Michelle Obama. This late in the game, the DNC would have to arbitrarily decree a new nominee. Okay. Something could happen to Joe Biden. He could have a heart attack or something. Or, he's got steel plates in his brain. Something bad could happen to Joe Biden. But then they got Kamala Harris. Maybe she says, no, I won't run. This is really the only path forward for them, to be completely honest. Here's the only functioning scenario if they don't want Joe Biden. Now, a lot of people I've talked to said, no, it's going to be Joe Biden. And I'm like, that's crazy. And they say, yeah, well, Trump will be in prison. Okay, maybe. I'm not saying Trump did anything wrong. But you've got one out. And that is Joe Biden suffers a medical episode. Kamala Harris says, I will serve as acting president until the election. Kamala Harris says something like, I do not want to start a presidential campaign when this nation needs a leader. I will serve as acting president, and then I will step down. I call on the Democrats to find a nominee to run, and they can focus on that. And that looks admirable. It looks like she's saying, I'm here to serve this country. I'm not here to waste time campaigning when this country is mourning and in need of leadership. And then they can bring in Gavin Newsom, who can say something like, I never thought this would happen. Nobody did. Oh, I can't believe it. But let me get to the crux, the core. The woke left, like I mentioned, they're the Nazis. Don't believe me? Let's start going through the news. Then we'll jump back and talk about polling numbers and see where we're at. Abandon Biden. Why abandon Biden? According to Politico, leaders from Michigan, Minnesota, Arizona, Wisconsin, Florida, Georgia, Nevada, and Pennsylvania met in Dearborn, Michigan to coordinate their efforts before the election. During a press conference, University of Minnesota professor and member of the coalition, Hassan Abdel Salam, said, we are looking into finding ways to build a mechanism of coordination between all the swing states so that we're constantly working together to ensure that Muslim Americans will come out in all of these states and that Mr. Biden will lose each and every one of them. Right behind me, what Mr. Biden should see is 111 electoral votes, and he won last time with 74. There is no way Joe Biden will abandon Israel. All these people can come out and say whatever they want. They can say, Joe Biden, you got to stop funding Israel, otherwise we ain't going to vote for you. Joe Biden won't care. You see, Donald Trump wanted to withdraw forces from the Middle East. Donald Trump wanted to stop war. And this is what happens to him. He is now facing several hundred years in prison. One of the judges in one of his cases, because he got many, already expressed the opinion that he should be in jail. Now, this judge should not be overseeing these cases, but doesn't matter because the game is rigged, isn't it? So you think Joe Biden would back down from supporting Israel? That ain't going to happen. So by all means, abandon Biden. Back away from Joe Biden, abandon him, and then Donald Trump wins. Donald Trump is going to be way more pro-Israel than Joe Biden is. But I want to show you some stories before we jump to all the polling to explain to you what I mean when I say, I look at what the woke left is and I see Nazism. Now, I want to clarify, I know, you're going to get some grifter leftists being like, duh, but the Nazis were so different. Because I'm not saying they hold the same core ideologies. I'm saying the emotional core of these groups is very much the same. But let's try this. I see a viral video of people marching through the streets in Philadelphia, chanting Intifada revolution. And for the most part, it's kind of like, okay, well, whatever. You're saying, you want Palestine to overtake Israel. Here's what I want to say, right? You have these people chanting, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And, a lot of people say the criticisms of Israel is not anti-Semitic. It's criticisms of Israel. Fair point. That's correct. You can criticize a government without being critical of the people as a race or ethnicity, right? That's stupid. Vladimir Putin does something. We don't say, it's the Russian people. Oh, Russians. And then get mad at Russians in America. No, we get mad at the political elements of it, right? That being said, when they chant from the river to the sea, that's anti-Semitic. And I know there's going to be a lot of people saying, no, it's not. Because there are people that are just so psychotically anti-Israel. No, it is. Why? I'll tell you. When they chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, are they referring to the Arab Israelis that live inside Israel? They don't. They're not referring to those people. They're referring specifically to the Jewish Israeli citizens. That's what they're referring to. And government. And so when they talk about freeing Palestine, the lightest interpretation is, as I've been told, there will be equal rights in Israel. And I'm like, I really don't believe you when you're claiming you have a right to return. They call it right of return to land that was yours, but that you'd think Israel would stand. So I don't believe that. I'm sorry. Then let's just take a look at, okay, let's say what is from the river to the sea becomes Palestine. ruled by the Palestinian Authority. Are they talking about changing the lives of any of the Arabs in Israel? I mean, I guess they're saying that they're going to give them more political power or whatever, but the targeting is the Jewish population. That's it. That's it. Or I suppose you can say, to be fair, the best interpretation of this as why it's not anti-Semitic is because they'd probably target the Christians too, of which there are many, though it is mostly Jewish. But here's what we have. An element of the left that I think will tank the Democrats and is tanking the Democrats is, here we go. PA governor rips protesters who mobbed Jewish-owned falafel shop to harass owner. Blatant act of anti-Semitism. They're marching down the street chanting, "Goldie, Goldie, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide." Because it's a Jewish and Israeli-owned falafel restaurant? Listen, these people are dangerous and psychotic. You want to make the argument they're not targeting Jewish people, it's just Israel? Fine, whatever. You're allowed to target governments and governmental action. But yo, this is this is a restaurant in Philly that sells falafel. This is where we're currently at. So I'm sorry. When I look at all of this stuff, here's one. Civil rights lawyer blasts woke Illinois school district racial segregation of math and English classes in bid to boost black children's scores and warns it may be illegal. So come on. These people are pushing for racial segregation. They're outright targeting Jewish businesses. Now, I can understand their ideology is not one-for-one identical with Nazism. What I'm saying is, how does Nazi Germany become Nazi Germany? How does Weimar Germany become Nazi Germany? How do the Bolsheviks take over? How does the Soviet Union rise? It is through similar mental breakdowns, zealotry, and anger. And that's what we're seeing now. Let's talk about the Progress Pride flag. I see this rainbow flag with a triangle on it being flown at businesses in Frederick, Maryland, where we're just outside of. This is no different to me than the Nazi flag. I went to an antique store in Austin. What did I find? They had swastikas everywhere. In Austin? And as the guy explained to me, pre-World War II, swastikas were symbols of good fortune and good luck. And so people would decorate their homes with swastikas everywhere. And they would put them into buildings. They would build buildings in the shapes of swastikas. You see, we grew up in a world where the Nazis took that symbol and then used it to represent a psychotic, murderous, genocidal ideology. So for us, this symbol means something different. So some people like to point out that the swastika inverted is an ancient, it's a symbol in the Eastern Hemisphere, and it's still used to this day, and it is. And in the West, it's become synonymous with evil. Isn't that wild, though? Go and check out the, look up photos. You can Google search this. Pre-World War II swastika decorations. And you can see people with birthday cakes and wallpaper, posters, and little flags and all that stuff. Because it was just a symbol of good fortune. What do you think the rainbow is? What does the rainbow represent? To most people, it represents springtime. Nah, I get it. The LGBT community uses the flag to represent a bunch of, I don't know, I guess sex-related things. Fine, whatever. And now with the Progress Pride flag, you have black and brown people on it as well, which clearly takes away from whatever it was supposed to be with LGBT and now represents the ideology of the far left. You look at this, and right now what you see is it's a rainbow. It's springtime. It just doesn't mean anything. But you see it beginning. The marching down the street targeting of Jewish people, the celebration of what Hamas did. Let me explain something. Numerous reports that women were gang raped by Hamas and Palestinians, these captors. I'm sorry, they raped these victims. There's a video of a guy screaming as they capture an Israeli woman. I believe it was at the music festival. They were going to gang rape her as she's like cowering and huddling. A video emerged showing her being rescued and she's struggling to walk. The assumption is kind of obvious. When the far left says this is resistance, when these people call it resistance, take these elements and put them all together. Screaming at a falafel shop in Philadelphia, calling them genocidal, That's kind of nuts. Why? Because the business is owned by a Jewish guy. There you go. Okay. And Israeli. You take a look at their calls for segregation, and you take a look at how they celebrate the killing of babies, the raping of women, and they say that's resistance. If that's resistance, what happens when they win? Right. Now, I don't think the neocons and the neolibs are good either. I'm not saying we are surrounded by good, wholesome individuals, and I'm not even telling you to vote Republican. I'm just saying these people represent something dark and evil. How is it that so many people threw up that salute to Hitler? They didn't know what that was going on. They didn't care. They heard the radio, they heard Hitler's broadcast, and they believed every word of it. Now, I think we're going to repel this. And I think it's thanks to the decentralization of information. With the rise of Nazi Germany, Hitler was able to use radio, which created a unified message. And while you do have the narrative machine in this country, and you have the censorship industrial complex, well, you still have a decentralized communications network for which you and I are able to communicate, or you're able to watch my videos. You're also able to post comments and make videos yourself. So what's happening now is these woke far leftists, this could be something interesting. It's the 20s, right? It's possible. I don't see it likely, but it's possible. By the 2030s, we actually have a full-on fascistic government run by people claiming to be good and noble and progressive, just like Nazi Germany. It's early. I'm optimistic, though. In this story, we see that Trump is leading Biden in 2 of 3 key swing states. Former president is up in Georgia and Arizona, while Democrat is on course to hold Wisconsin. Okay, well, that's good for him. It's a small poll, so I'm not a big fan of these. But we do have a lot of data coming out showing that Donald Trump is ahead across the board, but more importantly, in swing states. Currently, the Real Clear Politics average has Donald Trump up 1.7 points. Now, it was at one point, just a few days ago, actually, last week, 2.6%. At this time in history, last election cycle, Joe Biden was up 10 points. Clinton was up 0.6. Yeah, I don't see how Joe Biden turns this one around. I honestly don't see how any Democrat could. Let's operate in the assumption that they're planning on swapping in Gavin Newsom, as many people believe. Some kind of shadow campaign is currently underway. I mean, Newsom debating DeSantis. Why? The only upside there is for Newsom. DeSantis couldn't possibly gain. He's running in a primary. Maybe that's what he was thinking. Newsom is not going to be able to recover the pro-Palestine crowd. Newsom is going to get asked heavy questions about Israel-Palestine, and he's going to have one answer. He supports Israel. He's going to say what Hamas did. And you know what? I mean, he's mostly right. I don't care. I think From the River to the Sea is specifically targeting Jews. I think that the big issue really is Islam versus a Jewish state. I do believe there are a lot of anti-war activists and even friends of mine who don't care about any of the religious component, and they just don't like the actions of Israel. My view is mostly welcome to war. It's a war that doesn't involve us. I am sick of hearing about it. But you know what? You've got people marching through the streets targeting businesses in the United States because the owner is Israeli or Jewish or whatever. You've got people on campuses chanting these things. You've got this video of this massive march. Actually, let me play this for you. I think this is nails on a chalkboard. They're basically saying with Intifada is they want the Palestinian people to crush the state of Israel and take all of the land back from the river to the sea. It would be theirs. Yeah, okay. Forgive me, but I'm not going to believe people who target Jewish-owned businesses are going to give Jews in Israel should Palestine take over the entirety of the land, I don't think the Jewish people who live there are going to be treated very well. The argument they say is Jewish people don't treat them well. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to war. I'm not happy about it. I'd love it if people got along. Didn't Hamas, I'm not following this one too closely, but I believe Hamas broke the ceasefire right away. Now they're trying to bring another ceasefire, all that stuff. Yeah, sorry, I don't believe you. The left lies about everything. They want racial segregation. I believe they're abject evil. I believe the woke left is abject evil. Now, the people who adhere to this and march around, they may be the banality of evil. Marching blindly alongside demons who would kill and murder for no reason. That's what I see with the woke left. But I do see us winning. I don't know what happens in 2024. I have no prediction. I have no idea. It's pretty wild. I usually have at least some you know what? This could possibly happen. When I look at all these elections, I'm like, hey, look at this data. Here's what I think. In 2020, we had so many sources like Moody's Analytics. Moody's was saying Trump was on track to win. He couldn't lose. And the one thing that we could not predict, changing to the voting system, which greatly benefited Democrats. Whether or not you think there was fraud or anything like that, it is a fact. Universal mail-in voting and lockdowns gave Democrats a massive edge. Ain't nobody's voting for Joe Biden, but they were voting against Trump. Why? Well, many people don't like Trump. Democrats just went knocking on doors. That's all that it took. And there's a lot of people who didn't care about Trump. And they sold themselves. They sold themselves out. Joe Biden came in and now look where we are. Prices skyrocketing, rent skyrocketing. And they're lying. Biden comes out and he was like, you gotta lower your prices, man. Inflation's gone way down. He actually said that. Let me explain. Inflation's gone down from 16 to 3% or whatever, which means prices are still up. So you can't just, the cost of goods is still up. You can't just lower your prices. Inflation means things are still getting expensive. But Biden's a moron. He's completely incapable. So this is what we're heading into for the next year. December 4th. How about that? Can you believe it? 2024 around the corner. I'm surprised that we made it through. We made it through 3 years of Joe Biden. And now we're coming into the last year, and I have no idea what's going to happen. I think the potential for extreme violence is very, very high. And that's what has me worried. But I really don't know. How could Donald Trump not go to prison? Seriously. Liberal juries, they're not going to let him off the hook. I mean, they're not. I shouldn't even say it that way because I don't even think Trump did anything wrong. They're not going to let him go. Already in New York at the fraud trial, they're not giving him a trial as to whether he did fraud. They already declared he did. They're just trying to figure out how much money they take from him. I think these cases that we're seeing, they're not here to determine whether or not Trump did something wrong. They're just here to lock him up. And they'll do it to everyone else. If these people win, you will live in a world where one day you wake up and some party member will say, if you do not do as we say, we will destroy your life. And then you're going to be like, I'll just say whatever you want me to say. Some people might resist. But the party member will come and they'll say, we want you to give us your stuff. We're going to take your stuff from you. That's what they do in North Korea. That's what they did in the Soviet Union. That's what they do in China. We can't live that way. I do want to end this, though, by saying I'm fairly optimistic. I mean, look, even if they put Trump in prison, it doesn't change the fact that he's running for president. They may do it thinking that it'll spike his run. He's going to lose a bunch of votes because it perhaps. But we'll see. We'll see. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.